Hello AS, let's go through your second formal assessment mark scheme. So just a little bit about what to do. I'm sure you're all aware, but please just make sure you've checked off everything in the list. So the first thing I would like you to do is find a different coloured pen. Please don't use a highlighter to write with, they're really difficult to read. There are some different coloured pens in the plastic boxes if you haven't bought any. You can bring pencil as well. As an absolute last resort, you could write your notes in a different colour and then highlight them, but they must be in a different colour. It will be really difficult for you when you come back to these to think, now what did I actually do, and what did I not write at the time in the exam, what did I get the mark for? The second thing I would highly recommend is you check my maths. Please count up and check that I've added up everything up correctly, and also that I've given you the right percentage. I'm more than happy to check those with you. And the most important thing to think about is, why didn't you get the marks? So if you did get full marks, that's brilliant. Obviously you want to make a note of that as well, so you make sure you continue it, but also consider, why didn't you get the marks? So don't just make notes, don't just copy from the slide. Listen to the information that's being shared at the same time and think, what did I not do that didn't get me the marks? And is it something consistent? And so that brings in the other point: annotate more than just what's written on the PowerPoint. Don't just copy out the answer again, the different answer. I'd rather you see you telling me what you didn't do, or what you need, more importantly, what you need to do next time. Do point out, so do let me know, the next bullet point, do let me know if you think you've listened to the mark scheme and you think, well, actually I deserve more marks than that. Please let me know for two reasons. One, you might be right and you get some extra marks, or secondly, that suggests that you're not sure why you've dropped the marks. It's really important to be aware of that. So I'm more than happy to have another look at my maths and also talk to you if you think there's a mark you should have got that you didn't get, and you might get it, or we might talk about why not. And then finally, what I'd like you to do, so the key things I would like you to do: annotate your sheet and then tell me something that's improved from your last assessment, or something you've maintained from your last assessment. So what was something that went well? Tell me something you'll do differently for next time. Imagine you were going to get research methods assessment again. I've still not decided what I'll set you for your next formal assessment, whether it will be new stuff or whether it will be research methods. But imagine that you're doing it again. What would you do differently? And then just a warning: if you didn't get or get close to your target grade, we will be asking you to resit as well once you have Andy's paper and we can confirm. Okay. So a really important note: a lot of you confused or didn't mention or didn't discuss the DV in a couple of the answers, which was for this answer was really important. For future answers, it might not be the DV, it might be the method, it might be the design, whatever it might be. Because of that, I would like to recommend that you all underline the stimulus. I saw some people highlighting different things, which was really good, and some of you noting things down. But what I'd really like to see while you're practicing is highlighting each of those individual things we talked about we talk about every lesson. And we do that for a reason, because it will make such a massive difference. So some of you confused the DV because you hadn't read the stimulus carefully, or just didn't talk about it when you should have done. And I think when you've highlighted the stimulus, when you've fully understood it, you will automatically start to talk about the DV more. Okay, so this one: explain why it's important to match students on their high level of interest in business studies. So explain why. So why are you doing it? And also it mentions specifically their high level of interest in business studies. So you must talk specifically about the stimulus. Just saying it controls individual differences won't be enough. You've got to explain why. So there you go, you must contextualise. Because it mentions business studies, because it makes a clear reference to the stimulus, you must refer back to it. So you would get 1 mark for making some kind of reference to level of interest could affect their satisfaction scores. Satisfaction score being the DV, not how well they did, not how good they did, but satisfaction score. They're not interested in what they achieved, they're interested in their satisfaction, and that is the DV, which is why you want to underline the stimulus. And then you've got matching would keep this participant variable constant. Okay, I've accepted a bit of flexible with a few other things, but if you haven't contextualised, you're not going to be accessing many or any of the marks. Okay, so just one other variable which the research should have matched the students on, and explain how this might have affected the satisfaction scores. So again, satisfaction scores, not how well they did, nothing else. Okay, so two things there: you've got to name one and then say how it might have affected the satisfaction scores. So you get 1 mark for the suitable variable. AQA didn't accept age on the mark scheme this time. Apologies for that if they didn't. It was always a bit of a weird one. My marking trainee person couldn't really actually tell me why they didn't. But I think it's because it's quite a generic answer. So yeah, we could mark them on age, but that's a bit of an easy catch-all. Why would somebody like business studies more or less, or why would age affect their satisfaction score? So I think you have to put a really, really good justification in there, because why would a 16-year-old not enjoy business studies as much as a 45-year-old, for example? Potentially you could argue that if they're older, then it's something they've chosen to come back and study, but they didn't mention they were studying it for their A-levels or anything like that. So that's one that I think is really hard to justify. Things that are a little bit easier, you might have interest in computers, past experience of using computers, disability, or prior knowledge of business studies. And then you've got 1 mark for explaining clearly how it relates to satisfaction score. Again, specific, contextualised, not just vague broadness, so extraneous variables and so on. So if the answer was that you'd match them on prior knowledge of business studies, those who already know about business studies might be less satisfied as they're not learning anything new. So you need to mention satisfaction in that second point and do it well. Okay. Outline 1 benefit of allocating the students randomly to the different numbers of online hours and classroom hours. They have specifically mentioned different number of online hours and classroom hours. So that is how you get the marks for contextualising. So you must be specific there. So lots of you are absolutely right. It removes researcher bias or participant bias. I like the way you thought about both of those things, but you must contextualise. You can't just say it removes researcher bias. So it removes researcher bias, so they cannot give people to the number of hours online they think they would like, or that give people the number of hours online that they think they would like, or researcher bias, so they cannot pick the number of hours online they would prefer, and this will increase the validity of the results. Okay, it's only 2 marks, so you don't need to say much more than that, but you must contextualise it. Briefly outline how using a stratified sample might be an improvement to the design. Really important thing here, if you say improvement, you must draw comparisons, okay? So why, or explain why stratified sampling is improving the design. You can't just say a strength of stratified sampling, you've got to say why stratified sampling is an improvement on opportunity sampling to get the 3 marks. Anything less than that, anything else, and you might get 2 marks. So stratified sampling would improve the design because, and then we've got that it identifies each strata of the population, ensuring a representative sample. So you get a mark for talking about a representative sample. This increases population validity, meaning the results can be generalised, rather than just whoever is available at the time, who might not be representative of the target population. So that's bolded and underlined because you must draw comparisons between opportunity and stratified sampling. Okay, so if you didn't get full marks, that might be why not. I may have missed it out. I may have said you've done it when you didn't. Just keep a real eye out for that one. That's so important. Okay. Give an example of a question that might collect qualitative data. The focus here was qualitative data and an example. So you need to write a question here, not just put open questions or something like that. And you must force them to give more than a 1-word answer. So read especially if I've written the word careful next to your question, read it again. Could you potentially say very, yes, no, a lot, much, whatever, not much? Make sure, if you could say those things, so did you how much I'm trying to think, did you enjoy the course? Yes, no, so they're closed. So make sure that you've got explain why or explain how. A lot of people are very successful, they ask a question and they put and why at the end, which is really good. So just check for that one. One problem the researcher might have analysing the qualitative data collected from the questionnaires. So the focus here is on qualitative data. I was thrilled some of you knew self-report evaluation. That was really, really good. However, at this point, it was about the qualitative data. Okay, so some of the different points you could have made, it doesn't need to be contextualised here, is it relies on interpretation, so it's opens up to bias. So it's explaining one of the problems. So therefore a strength is, a weakness is, this is a weakness because. Not easy to categorise, so you can't turn it into numbers, or individual responses, so cannot be summarised. Some of you gave like a combination of those 2 answers together, which only got you 1 mark. You need to be telling me it, you need to be elaborating on it. This is the weakness, this is a weakness because. Okay. And then outline 1 ethical issue. The key thing here, it's only 1 mark, is outline. Not name, not identify, outline. That means you don't get any marks for telling me what the ethical issue is. You get 1 mark for outlining it, for briefly explaining it, or just pointing it out. So the student should be treated with respect by explaining their answers, will be kept confidential. They can withdraw, it must be made clear to them they can withdraw their answers at any time, and they must be told exactly what they're trying to find about the relationship between satisfaction and the way the information was delivered. There you go, answers must be an outline and not just a name or a term. So if you didn't get the marks, it's because you sounded more like you named it than you outlined it. Okay, here for the graph, everyone so far, I think, almost everybody, remembered it was a scatter, so did a scatter graph properly, which was excellent. You could only get 1 mark if the title was appropriate if you hadn't done a scatter graph. You've got axis 1 is labelled, axis 2 is labelled, and both of them have suitable scales, and you've got 11 points on the scattergram. A lot of you lost marks because it is a scattergram, it is a relationship, and therefore you must mention relationship in the title. So you wrote a title, but it must include relationship and the 2 variables, so number of hours online and satisfaction score. Okay, so that might be why you didn't get the marks. What conclusion might the research draw? There's 2 marks here, so you need to mention 2 things. If you only mention 1, you need to think, why am I only getting 1? Why is it 2 marks? So we've got that it was a negative correlation, and then explain what that was. So the more hours online, the less satisfied the students were. And you'd also get a mark if you'd said the second point, and then mentioned that it does not indicate cause and effect. Relationships don't tell us if one thing causes another, all they tell us is there's a link between the 2 pieces of data. And then you've got mode 19 and median 12. So just make sure that you're okay with those. Mode is the most common. You don't do anything else with it other than identify which is the most common. So look and see how many, which is the number that appears the most. And median, where you line them all up in number order and count inwards. Mean wasn't asked to be, you weren't asked to calculate mean, which is adding them all together and dividing by the number that there is, so you wouldn't get a mark for that one. And explain why the median would be more suitable to represent the average score for satisfaction of students. So you must contextualise. Barely anybody contextualised on this one. So the mean is, so you're explaining specifically for this data why median is better than mode, not generically but specifically. So the median is more representative because the mode is the top end of the set of the scores. So if you look at mode, it's actually right at the top. It's at the top. So it's not representative, whereas more of the scores are numerically closer to the median. So the median is the more accurate one. Just look at the data and have a think about it. Is there lots and lots of people who said 19 or around 19? No, it's near the top. So you need to talk about the median, saying that most of the scores are around the median. So it's not a generic strength or weakness, it's specific, contextualised one. Okay. And then which of the sets would indicate a negative skew? And you've got here the way that I like to be able to remember it. So you've got L for negative, and you want to think about your feet, so the skew is towards this way, and mean, median and mode. And if you think about if it's positive, it's mode, median, mean. So that might help you a little bit, and I do come back to that in the second year for a bit of a recap as well, but I quite like the way that works if you think about how the curve should look and where mean, median and mode falls. So mean, I always think of the little toe as being the mean one because it's the meanest, as in like there's not very much of it. If you say someone, oh, you're a bit mean, that was a bit of a mean portion, it means quite small, whereas mode obviously means the most. Well, there's the most of the big toe, the biggest toe is the biggest. I know that's not perfect and that's not exactly what mode means, but that's how I remember it. So there's the most of the big toe, and that might help you there with that a little bit as well, but the answer would be B. And that is that. Thank you very much.